This is Prisma Lopez Marine here on 18 WJTS on our Conversations with Monday with the Mayor. We're here in Jasper with Mayor Terry Seitz. Hello, Mayor.
Hi, Prisma. Good day to you.
Good day. Always good to be here. There are a lot of things happening as always, in Jasper. One of those things that are important is to look towards the budget of 2017 as we are getting closer to the end of the year.
That is right, and I'll try to give a study of municipal budgets as well as local county government budgets because we do go through this every year. Essentially, municipal or government funding in Indiana and budgeting is a rolling process. Right now, we're looking at any projects that are budgeted for 2016 that may or may not occur, equipment that may not be purchased, and therefore, if that's the case, we can kind of roll those dollars into 2017. So again, it's a constant moving target. And that makes it very difficult. It's a 2017 budget cycle, but it literally involves 2016 funds too. In a nutshell for taxpayers, if you're a taxpayer in Jasper, there's some news you need to know. First of all, due to the state constitutionally mandated property tax caps, taxpayers in the city of Jasper have $2.2 million in your pockets that you would have had involved in city government in about the last 6 to 7 years since the tax caps have been put in place. So Jasper taxpayers have saved that. That being the case, the city of Jasper government does not have $2.2 million over those years, and that really is something we must deal with every year. It's the way we have to do business. Jasper has, as with any other county tax entity, has two ways of funding city government services. That is through property tax and through income tax. The income tax is county option income tax and economic development income tax. But essentially, those provide the funding mechanisms for the city of Jasper, the largest being property tax. The state of Indiana has constitutionally mandated property tax caps. So at a certain point, residential property is 1%. You will never pay more than 1% of your assessed value. Generally, rental properties are 2%, commercial businesses and companies are 3%. But as things grow and as values increase, essentially, there's a certain amount of dollars that we'll know that we could have received, but we won't. If your house is valued at $100,000, you will never pay more than $1,000 of tax. Your assessed valuation, though, may say your house is really valued at $125,000, but again, you will not pay that additional tax on the $25,000. You'll be capped out at $100,000. So ultimately, the city of Jasper and other entities will not get those dollars. So we must always, and have for the last several years, play a game of basically how do we take those funds that we're not getting, take them off our budget, and ultimately deal with what we have. So again, good news is for taxpayers, so to speak, is that you have $2.2 million in your pockets over the last 6 or 7 years that are because of the property tax caps. For us, that's $2.2 million that we did not get. So when it talks about how do we put our budgets together, we have to look at what are the funding sources they have. And I've been an advocate of two things: trying to grow our assessed valuation by encouraging investment in Jasper. On the abate, that's why we have a tax abatement process, why they don't pay taxes on those abatements initially. We've had $68 million of new investments that will eventually come on the books. The other aspect is increasing, bringing people to Jasper to live so that they're essentially paying those income taxes, those taxes that is not capped. We want to fill those jobs. We want to have people moving to Jasper to live here. We need to grow our cities because that helps fund our city government, and to grow them inside the city with what we call infill, utilizing these former factories or having housing that is inside the city, doesn't have to extend services. Then that's how we can kind of healthily grow that population, fill those jobs, and they're paying the income tax. So it's a real balance. It's something that happens every year. Our council has to deal with that, and so does our clerk treasurer's office, and we know that. Those things in the property tax side are not coming back. As a mayor, do I think that was somewhat short-sighted to put that in our Constitution? As a citizen then, but I have a point of view now that probably was. sooner or later we really have to look at the likelihood of, will there be some additional fees? Will there be some other local fees and taxes that the legislature says do? I think it's possible no matter what we do. It has little to do with any of the projects we have in Jasper, if anything. It's just the realities of life that when you have two revenue streams and one is permanently capped, and the other one has a chance to grow because of either bringing people to Jasper to work and or live, then that's critical. But ultimately, what do our citizens want? Our citizens like to have the services that we have, but ultimately we have to make sure that we have ways of paying them, to make sure that perhaps as an employee leaves, maybe we have attrition, we don't fill that position, to really watch about having any new hires whatsoever that would be a full-time position with insurance and benefits. So we are constantly monitoring that and trying to not grow that, but also still provide the service. So I congratulate our council for being able to work with us on that. We're no different than any other state in the city, or any city in the state of Indiana on the property tax side. We're extraordinarily different on the ability to raise revenue and to raise our assessed valuation. That Jasper can do. But it's a long-term look, and it's not something that happens overnight. So that's where we're at. Hope you understand and have a little better realization of what we go through on our budget cycle.
One of the things that you did mention was in terms of the Jasper Cultural Center and how that's going to be looked, or you said something about it will be built differently.
I don't know exactly the question, Prisma, that you're looking at. We look at any property that we have, any development. For instance, years ago when things like the depot or the mill or whatever were done, they were readily accepted into the city. Now we will look at the cost-benefit analysis of things, even something as small as the recent labyrinth. We met with the park department and said, does this impact you in any cost? We know certainly the possibility of the cultural center. The arts department has done a very detailed understanding of would there be any changes in the cost, and again, how can they be offset? The park department has done the same thing. What would be the cost of this? Would they come from internal sources? Do we move people around? And all that has been done on both of those properties, and they're fairly efficient, but ultimately we used to never have to look at that. Now we try to say, before we build this or before we accept a gift, what helps us maintain that gift, even to maybe having funds to reseal concrete or funds to do flowers or things like that. We have to look at all of that and have that discussion, and that's because of the property tax cap. So it's helped us be efficient, but ultimately it's not something we'll ever gain back from. As we start to go through these next several years, we're going to continually max out unless we can increase that assessed value, which we are working on, and bring more people into work, creating more jobs. That's what we want to do.
What I meant with the Jasper Cultural Center was that you did say that earlier in our conversation that it will be built up, so it wouldn't be built from its current structure. It will be its new.
Oh, sorry, didn't understand that. Well, the part about the proposed Jasper Cultural Center, which is separate from the budget side, is that Dean Vonderheid, who's a council at large in City of Jasper, also president of the library board, announced at last week's city council meeting that that proposed structure at the site of the Hoosier Desk building proper would come down. It is going to be a new build. It is the most cost-effective way to do that. And while I would welcome things either way as long as it's cost-effective, and we believe we are staying within a proposed budget, we will probably be expecting to see some plans in regards to that very soon. And again, I think the understanding is that is probably most cost-effective. That would be a new build.
And that's exciting. And going back to the budget, it is very important that our community does see that having new talent coming into here, bringing that essence of putting things into place so that it does appeal to that talent coming in.
We do have to do that, and it's a tough thing. We can't necessarily just bring in people and say, here, come here and live and work. It's really the employers that play a role with the wages that are paid, the competitive nature of their business, also what the city has to offer. Why would they live here compared to somewhere else? But ultimately, I think Jasper is a regional city. We will be our own best driver of that. We will likely continue to draw, as we do now, from talent from counties nearby us that have about 6,000 people working here. Ultimately, bringing people that not just work here, but to live here will impact us even greater as a community, certainly impact our budget in a positive way, and that's where we've been focused for the last 4 years, of looking at economic development as Jasper being that central part, because ultimately, again, filling from our inside out is a very efficient way to do that, and that helps our budget overall, because it's easier to service those citizens who live in our core rather than it is always to serve citizens that we expand the territories of Jasper. We're not opposed to either. We just acknowledge there is a easier, cost-effective way of doing business in the core out.
And now that some of that new talent who would like to have a business here, it's very present. I spoke with the running candidates for governor, both John Gregg and Eric Holcomb, and they were very aware of how small businesses here in Jasper, because they both visited here sometime this month. They really spoke about how small businesses were very recognizable here in Jasper, and that's very interesting.
Well, give credit really to the chamber and the small business development, the environment that we have. We have right now, I think, only maybe 1.5 empty storefronts in downtown, none on the square, and are filling those up. And the businesses change too. You know, what I always look at, if somebody goes out of business, which is often something we can't control, there is very little time before somebody's back in, and that shows some strength. Ultimately, though, we have some investments we need to do in downtown Jasper. When they take place, you know, we'll see. But that's why we have some vision to look out and say, here's what would be the next step. There are priorities, and we know where we're at right now with being able to take our city and prepare for the next 25 to 50 years. And ultimately, I like that. I mean, we've had vision, we've had planning, we're implementation things in stages, and that's often how you have to do that. But at least we know what's next, and all things that are planned ultimately have something that works out positively, even if the plans change somewhat. It's that lack of vision, that lack of planning, that literally can lead to some hopscotch and go, well, let's do this or let's do that. I think we've made a very good pathway that's down for the citizens of Jasper, and we'll see how it develops, kind of like a flower budding.
Absolutely. Thank you so much. Thank you, Mayor. Thank you so much for joining us here on 18 WGTS on Mondays with the Mayor.